Here we go. And top of the hour to you all. Great pleasure to see you all here. A nice attendance. So listen, if nobody else shows up, it would be very nice. This is not necessarily the world's most popular topic, but it's one of the world's most important topics, and that's why I want to bring it to you. Some of you who know me in detail and know my history know I was part of, it's still going on, but I was part of an early day movement back in the 70s and 80s. We called it clinical ecology. And what we meant was the human being, the human organism in relation to the environment and the health issues that that could cause. And it became obvious to, I mean, there were a handful of us at first, but eventually it became dozens and then hundreds. And now, of course, thousands, if not tens of thousands. They don't necessarily call themselves clinical ecologists like we did. But the whole point of the ecology is something the environment was doing to you. So, you know, if you had a rash, but that was caused by an egg allergy, well, there was nothing actually really wrong with you. It was the egg allergy. So just give up eating eggs. Eventually, usually the allergy would settle down and then you go back to occasional eggs anyway. Sometimes it needs a more precise desensitization method. But the point is that avoidance was always the best strategy by far. So I was part of this eventually became a worldwide movement in the 70s. One of the early things we obviously were aware of was food allergies. I used to teach people about food allergies and test and discover and change lives with food allergies right back in the 70s. And it was scandalously controversial. It was called Mumby Jumbo in my city then. And of course, they had to eat their words. Because by the end of the 80s, everyone in the world knew that food allergies were widespread, potentially very damaging to your health, and that you had to do something about them. But pretty soon it grew. You know, when you talk about allergies, most people would think about things like cat fur and house dust mite and pollen. And sure, those are part of it. But, you know, food allergy was a bigger deal because we eat more of it. You know, if you're allergic to wheat, people often eat pounds of wheat every week. So, you know, you're really doing yourself a lot of damage if you can't tolerate it. And if it's a true allergy, then it would make you very sick. You know, like pollen allergy, for example, a few tiny little grains on the wind could make a person miserably ill with hay fever. So eating 2 slices of bread if you were allergic to wheat was basically extremely bad news. And then we began to realize a lot of people were actually reacting to chemicals in the air. They were breathing chemicals listen, I'm going to have to say something. Would you all please excuse me? Vivian, will you please go and turn off that ringing noise? It's very, very distracting. Thank you. I hope she gets that. If not, then I'm going to continue to be distracted. Where was I? See, the minute you interrupt the thread, we lose it. Anyway, chemical allergies emerged, and we were aware that some people were extremely environmentally sensitive. Ambient chemicals could disturb a person in all sorts of ways. You know, it could affect, you could get skin rashes, you could get headaches, but probably the most notorious of all was what we call brain allergies, and that was sort of brain fog, confusion, and so on. And for example, I'd find kids that reacted really quite strongly to only small amounts of chemicals, like as little as the felt tip pen that the teacher was using to write on the dry wall, the whiteboard, I should say, sorry. If that made a kiddie sick, that child would become completely unable to study for the rest of the afternoon. So it was a huge issue, and nobody was spotting it, nobody was talking about it, until we clinical ecologists jumped onto the game. So I'd like to, you know, consider myself a pioneering spirit, and basically I would say a very knowledgeable expert. Let's be honest about it. Okay, anyway, that's enough. Let's get going. Let's talk about air, what we're breathing in the air. Now, I've mentioned things like animal danders and pollen and house dust mite, but there are chemicals too. So I'm just talking overall. Okay, it's true, food allergies was a big thing. What you swallowed could make you really ill, but what you breathe could probably make you even more ill, because we're very intimate with things that we draw into our lungs. And the World Health Organization now, bless them, I think they've mishandled the COVID thing, but there was a time when you could rely on what they said, or at least rely on their figures anyway. Their estimate was 4.2 million deaths a year as a result of ambient outdoor air pollution. Ambient means outdoors. Now, I'm going to share with you that indoors are much more serious, but outdoor, we breathe some pretty bad stuff now. I live here in the valley of where Las Vegas is, and most mornings we can see a brownish pall of smog over the city. Interestingly, after lockdown, all the traffic and things disappeared. That vanished, but you know, it's something that we live with. And if you live in a really polluted city like Los Angeles or London, or God forbid, you know, Wuhan and Beijing and so on, then it's a really serious problem. There are a lot of people who fall ill as a result of household, that's indoor exposures. And I'll come to those in more detail shortly. But the bottom line is that the WHO reckoned that 91% of the world's population lived in places where the air quality was not considered safe or healthy for human beings. That's a pretty horrible statistic. I'd be very upset at 25 or 30%. 50% is ghastly. But look, if they're right, 91% of people are breathing poisons. It must have consequences, surely. Logic will tell you there must be consequences. And look, basically, this is a publication a few years ago, 2017, but more people die each year from indoor air pollution. And I mean die, folks. I don't mean have a cough or don't look well. I mean die from indoor air pollution than malaria, AIDS, and TB combined. That's pretty significant. In fact, the air in the home is so actually dangerous. Look, basically, it's 100 times worse than outdoor pollution, and is often well beyond EPA guidelines for work safety limits. You know, in certain workplaces, you're not allowed for chemicals to exceed this limit or that limit, you know, parts per million. We all know that. But what you probably didn't know is the average home is way beyond the safety levels. In other words, putting it another way, the air pollution in your home, the levels would just not be permitted at work. They'd close the factory place down. Now, we're breathing a lot of this polluted air. Let's just see how much. I'm sorry, folks, I've had a message that my internet connection is not very strong. This is something I should have shared at the beginning, which is that, you know, I think we're all suffering from this to a degree. During lockdown, everybody's on the internet. They're all doing Facebook, they're doing games, they're watching videos and downloading this, that, and the other. It's an almost inevitable consequence, I suppose. But what it means is that my internet, and I pay for blazing fast fiber optics, is just not that fast. So I do apologize if we do have some difficulties. So far, we've got away with it successfully at these 5 o'clock webinars. So here's hoping, as it were. Anyway, oh yes, let me say something as well for the latecomers, because I see, yeah, folks are still joining us. I said it at the beginning, but it's worth repeating. I want to take questions at the end. If you hover at the bottom, there's a little icon that says Q&A. If you click on it, you can type in a question and will come to me. I see it on my screen. Or if you wish, you can open up the chat and type your question into the chat, whichever. I'll deal with both when I'm finished. But I'm not going to take the questions till the end. I do not want interruptions. It distracts my level of thinking, and it's just not, in other words, it's not good. Plus, otherwise I might answer your question before the end, so don't get too hasty with wanting answers to the questions. Anyway, here we go. So 11,000 liters of air we inhale a day. That's 70 bathtubs worth. So you can guess, if the air is not very good, you're going to expose your body to a very significant amount of chemicals. Big problem. Now, look, this is China. We all know about China pollution, and you probably think, haha, but it's not, that's there, it's not here. Actually, you'd be wrong, because Chinese air pollution, I'm thinking Americans now, here in America, we suffer from Chinese air pollution. It comes across the Pacific. You can actually see it. Actually, there's a curious thing. I went to go and find a picture of it's called brown aerosol, and you can see streams and rivers of it crossing the Pacific and coming in on the west coast of America. Now, that was years ago. I used to have a picture, and then all of a sudden I can't find them. Is somebody trying to protect Chinese reputation? You know, I don't know, it could be, but certainly it was a bad problem, and space satellites were easily able to photograph this pollution crossing the Pacific. And Dr. Gary Gordon, a friend of mine, he may be the late Gary Gordon. I've not heard from Gary for 2 or 3 years now. I don't know. If anyone knows whether he's alive or not, please tell me. I hope so. I love Gary. He was amazing. But he told me that the air pollution in Arizona, he lived and worked near Phoenix and up country. I've forgotten where it was. It wasn't Tucson. It was the place up the hill a bit. Anyway, that they had air pollution that was from China on the trees and on the birds. And they knew because apparently each power station or coal working or emissions place has a sort of fingerprint chemical pattern, and you could find this on the birds and trees right up country and as far inland as Arizona, a couple of 100 miles from the coast. So it's pretty scary when you think about it. And I often warn people lightheartedly, but in a way it's serious. What does that mean about your organic food? It's been grown nicely. They're not using pesticides. It's chemical free. But then the rain brings all this terrible pollution onto the land, and it actually will attack the plants, the crops, that are going to be harvested, and you will eat believing it to be sweet and organic when in fact it's been rained on by trans-Pacific pollution. Anyway, this is the kind of stuff that we're breathing, and it does affect our entire body. It will inflame everything about our bodies. These irritant chemicals are inflammatory, and if you read any of my stuff, you know that inflammation is probably our #1 killer. It shortens people's lives more than probably anything else. It's very dangerous to have inflammation, and it's a bad call, isn't it? I mean, it's a tough break call. If you're breathing the stuff and you're not being given the option, if you live in a city like Los Angeles, there's a lot of pollution, mostly traffic pollution there rather than industry, it has to be said. But of course, the LA traffic pollution is added to the Chinese stuff coming over the ocean. So it's all pretty bad news, And then one of the things that worries me is children, babies. There's no question already that pollution has been measured to have damaging effects on fetuses, infants. They're born with smaller heads, shorter bodies. And I've talked for years about what I call the chemical blizzard, because it comes raining down on us all. And even in the Inuit, or the Eskimo population, in other words, in the far north, mothers are feeding lovely breast milk to their babies, but the breast milk is polluted with all these chemicals. The poor mother isn't doing it on purpose, and she's not careless about her lifestyle. She just doesn't have any choice. She's being forced to breathe it because, listen, COVID has taught us that we're all in this together. The whole world is involved. And really, this is just another health issue where we are all involved. We've got to take it seriously. And I mentioned inflammation. Well, inflammation is behind a lot of things, not the least of which is heart attack, stroke, and diabetes. So we're talking shortened lifespans just because of atmospheric pollution. So it's something that's serious, and I want you to take what I'm telling you and sharing with you tonight seriously, if you please. Okay, now one of the results of generalized inflammation is autoimmune diseases. Some of you may be suffering from these. Rheumatoid arthritis, for example. Hashimoto's disease. These are not really rare. Autism, multiple sclerosis are probably brain-type autoimmune diseases. There's just so much of our bodies gets drawn into this net of inflammation that we're all in danger from these chemicals. And of course, governments seem careless, most of them anyway. The New Zealand government tries to be green, but the American government isn't making any attempt to be green because they're being lobbied to the tunes of billions of, when I say lobbying, by the way, that's an English parliamentary expression. And when I use the word lobbying, of course, here in America, the correct word is bribes. It means spending money to get the result you want. Bribery, even touch of blackmail, I shouldn't be surprised. But look, there are one or two organs that we're very concerned about, kidneys and livers. They're really the only thing you've got between you and this polluted, poisonous environment are your kidneys, which filter your blood, and your liver, which is able to detoxify. The actual word is biotransformation, because altering it doesn't always result in something less toxic, unfortunately. But look, this is not even a surprise, is it? If you've got fine toxic particles floating in your blood and your kidneys busy trying to filter them out, what's going to happen to the kidneys? They get the main shock, the main impact. And so, I mean, this is like a very significant risk. CKD, by the way, there, if you look at the source at the bottom, CKD, chronic kidney disease, and ESDI is end-stage renal disease. That's when your kidneys are goosed. You know, you have to have gosh, early Alzheimer's. Anyway, you have to have it filtered through the machine. I'll get there in a minute. Filtered through the dialysis. Come on, doctor, wake up. You have to have dialysis to get rid of the other toxins. So it's very serious when your kidneys pack up. And then the liver, as I said, poor old liver. The liver catches everything, and especially what you eat, because the main blood vessels draining the alimentary canal go to the liver first. It's called the portal blood pathway. And the liver does its best. But, you know, liver inflammation is really quite deadly. Ultimately, it will result in scarring of the liver and liver failure. It's very serious. So we need to look after our liver and kidneys. But of course, the most obvious one is the lungs. And there is a huge increase in lung cancer. I've got a lovely old paper about how the title was How Victorians Lived, Ate and Died. And it was extraordinary because one of the hospitals in London, a man called his students to the bed of a patient, said, there's a case of cancer, you must come and see this, because cancer is really quite rare. It was then. But he said, this is a case of lung cancer, and you'll probably live your whole working lives as doctors without ever seeing another case of lung cancer. I mean, it's awesome to think of that. Very strange. In our times, lung cancer is the #1 killer cancer. More people die of lung cancer than any other cancer, and yet it used to be considered rare. Wow. Anyway, 29% of deaths from lung cancer because of pollution, 24% of deaths from strokes because of pollution, and 25% of deaths from heart disease. As I said, if you understand this background of inflammatory processes, you'll realize that breathing poisons that inflame your tissues and make your body struggle to try and cope and stay on top of this and repair it, that's going to lead to trouble sooner or later, and the more of it there is, the sooner it happens. I'm very sorry to say. There's even an increase of things like Alzheimer's and Alzheimer's in children. I mean, can you believe that? Early dementia, and it's a characteristic dementia. As you know, there are certain kinds of chemical deposits take place in the brain that are really quite characteristic. And even kids are getting this now. And apparently the reason kids get it, I think, is that their livers and kidneys are not as efficient as ours. You know, adult kidneys and adult liver are quite big. But if you picture it in a child, it's probably not able to cope with as much blood flow, and therefore not able to do as much cleansing and cleaning up. Now, it can also cause damage to the telomere process. We all know that can accelerate aging. There's a picture, I mean, these are not my slides, but I'm familiar with them. But the person who put this together used a picture of the little girl on the left is suffering from something called progeria. It means the child, by 10 or 11, the child looks like an old man or an old woman, and by 15, they're dead. That's seriously accelerated aging. It's very sad. But anyway, it will help us make the point that the seriously accelerated aging will, telomere shortening will shorten your life. And then we know there are, this has been around forever, hasn't it? Atmospheric pollution with pollens and cat fur. I mentioned them at the beginning. But these are rising every year. And I don't know why, because I don't think there's more ragweed now than there was 50 years ago. But the levels are persisting in the atmosphere for far longer. So it's become, something that's really of very, very serious importance to us all. We are breathing gunk, and some of it is highly likely to generate allergic reactions. I think, from my work beginning in the 70s and 80s, it became very clear that we are much more susceptible now to allergies than we were. Why? I don't know, but I'll enter a controversial two-penneth. I'm pretty certain that at least one of the reasons is the mass vaccination program. If you're dumping garbage on the immune system, it's bound to not like it and react. And I'm talking science. There are papers, that kids who've had extensive vaccinations are more susceptible to things like asthma, eczema, measurable, known and understood allergic phenomena. So I'm not just spouting off the top of my head or trying to be political. Mass vaccination does have its downside. Whether it works or not, it's another story. I'm not prepared to go there just now. But anyway, back to sort of general pollution, highway pollution. Now, in England, back in the 80s, I was challenged by the healthcare, well, the General Medical Council, it was called, that licenses and looks after doctors. They attacked me for various controversial things I said. But an article was produced and it basically scoffed at my position, which you can be allergic to traffic fumes. Doctors were falling in the aisles laughing and giggling at this absurdly stupid idea. Who is this crazy fool maniac lunatic that thinks you can be allergic to traffic fumes, chemical? What is he talking about? The odd thing was, less than 2 years later, the British, government doctor there, who's the equivalent of the Surgeon General here, came out with a publication that said, oh, well, we realize that traffic fumes are an extremely important sensitizing influence for people with allergies. It's causing problems. So in the end, I got backed, but I went through a very uncomfortable time when they were attacking me for these revolutionary ideas. But I saw it hundreds of times. Patients would say, I seem to react to traffic fumes, and if I get a bad dose when I go home, I find I'm reacting to my dinner. And I was, it's, I don't know, plantains or something. I know I can eat plantains and bananas, but after I've been stuck in traffic for 2 hours, I found I was very sick eating the food. When you hear this sort of story enough times, dozens or hundreds of times, you realize that there is a phenomenon. When I used to have mothers come in and say, this little Johnny, he seems to have degenerated cognitively and he's not so aware. In fact, they used to come in sometimes with a terrible diagnosis. It was called disintegrative psychosis. We don't use that term now. It sounds horrible, doesn't it? But it's the extreme end of the autism spectrum disorder. But when you've had enough mothers come in and say, he was fine, he was growing normally, he was a happy, bouncy child, then he had his measles vaccine, and from then, he was sick next day. A week later, he wouldn't talk, and he's never talked since. That was 5 years ago. When enough people say that to you, you realize something is going on. And I don't give a damn how many shill scientists they put on the case to say it's not true. I don't trust scientists. You can pay them to tell lies. That much seems obvious. But I trust mothers. They're intelligent. They can observe what's going on with their child. They know if the child is going off, a little bit off track, they instantly they know. And if it gets worse and worse, they're your best source of reference to say, when did all this start? And that's what I mean, by the way, going back overall to clinical ecology, would say, when did you first get sick? And then, well, what was it about that house? Where were you living? Was it near a freeway? Did you have damp problems? Was there mold and so on? We spent an hour to 90 minutes with each new intake asking all these detailed and important questions. What was going on when you got sick? The average doctor just says, "Oh, you're sick. Take these pills." My first question is, when did you get sick? What were you doing at the time? How long is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Are there any days when you really feel fine and there's nothing wrong? And if a person with asthma says, "Oh, some days I can breathe perfectly normally," this person doesn't have a lung disease. Otherwise, how could they breathe normally on certain days? You know that on the bad days, something is getting at their lungs. Something's causing the inflammation. Listen, I'm backing off a bit, aren't I? I'm philosophizing. But anyway, the point is, this is measurable. The effect is measurable. That if you live near a freeway, you're much more at risk for stroke, heart attack, lung cancer, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, preterm births, even childhood obesity, and I've said autism, and basically 10% higher chance of dementia. So, the city atmosphere, the air is not good, and the nearer the freeway to you that you are, the better. Best in a nice leafy suburb like we live in here, just away from the freeway. We don't want to be there. However, those of you who know your geography will know that we're east of California. And every summer, California wants to burn to the ground. It depends exactly which part. It's a very big state. But, they wildfire release, the toxic stew of pollution is carried by the wind, usually comes east, and it will cross into Nevada or Arizona at some point or other, north or south, but carries ultrafine particles, soot particles, smoke particles, which are very inflammatory and toxic. Methane, which is straight poison. Benzene, which is straight poison. It is seriously bad news. So we live with wildfires here. I never heard of such a thing when I was in England. I can't recall a single wildfire that we had. But anyway, you have them every year, not one or two, but 10, dozens, several hundred a year. Most of them, thankfully, fairly small, but some are enormous, as you know. And anyway, I want to move on now from the fact that outdoor pollution is bad, but indoor pollution is worse, much worse, up to 100 times more polluted than outdoor air. Now, I know it doesn't look like that from this picture. On the left, there's traffic fumes and it's horrible. Well, it looks like a nice, calm home with clean air. Well, it does look like that, but it isn't, There's so much, furniture, plastics, glues, particle board. There's I'll go into it in a little bit of detail. But anyway, trust me, the indoor pollution is very serious. And it's even more serious than outdoor pollution simply because of all the time that we spend indoors. Most of us have spent more than 90% of our time indoors in the last 3 months. So it's probably a very pertinent topic to be told about what harm you're doing yourself. And, do you think the CDC and the WHO are paying any attention to the fact that we're locked up to avoid a virus, but it's maybe, it's dramatically increasing our chance of being poisoned to death? I mean, I don't think they've even given it a thought, to be honest. Anyway, let's look at some indoor pollutants, right? Phthalates are pretty nasty. They're petroleum derivatives. They're used in fragrances and things like that. That thing on the left is supposed to represent scented candles. Right now, I can't stand scented candles. If I go into one of those stores, the souvenir shops that sell smelly, I have to go out. It starts choking me. It's horrendous, and I've no idea how those people who work in the shop can stand it for more than 10 minutes. Never mind spend their 8-hour working day in there. And yet, the phthalates and these things are not only often present, but you've got to be careful because sometimes tricky manufacturers will label things all natural or unscented And in fact, they have hidden chemicals. They're just being disingenuous and trying to trick people into buying their product. You know, food manufacturers do it now. They say organically grown. What does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean anything, because there's so much lying. People like Walmart, anyway, buy in their organically grown food from China. Ha ha. Would you believe that? Do you really believe that Chinese organic food really is organic? Oh, they're just saying it's organic because it sells better and they make more money. So phthalates, one of the hazards. Let's move on anyway. Detergents, cleaners, you know, degreasers, all those things. These are all extremely powerful chemicals. I mean, any housewife will tell you what it does to the gunk that is stuck to the stove top, or the goo that sticks around the inside of an oven if you forgot to clean it for too many weeks. It is seriously destructive. It will dissolve grease and certainly dissolve your lungs and the rest of your tissues if you're not careful. Now, I used to do I've written a lot of books on this, but I must say I'm not doing it as actively now as I was 25, 30 years ago. But I used to send patients on what I call a nose survey. And I used to say, go around the house and anything you can smell, pick it up and put it in a plastic bag. See, my basic model there was if there's enough to create a smell or an odor, there's enough to create symptoms. And that's absolutely incontrovertibly true. I know it to be true, and I've not heard it from anybody else. But believe me, it's true. If you can smell it, that's the capability of causing disease. So I used to have people smelling, you know, cosmetics. I'd go through the bedroom, the bathroom, under the sink, go all over the house, and anything that smelled, put it in a plastic bag, seal it with tape as completely 100% sealed, and then throw it in the back of the garage. Wait 1, 2, or 3 weeks, and if all your symptoms clear up, there's your answer. You're reacting to chemicals in the home. As I said, I called it a nose survey, and I think it was very crucial. Now, here's something else: pesticides, killers. Now, let me tell you, the word pesticide is a trick. It's designed to fool you into thinking it kills pests. Well, it does, but it kills everything. It's a biocide. It destroys life. It destroys living things. So remember, when you hear the word herbicide, which kills leaves and plants, fungicide, which kills funguses, or pesticide, which kills pests, they kill you as well. And you must remember that. These things are extremely dangerous. They just damage biological systems. They're designed and built to do exactly that. And then, I mean, the amount of damage it causes, we know, we're very clear now that Parkinson's disease is mainly the outcome of chemical pollution in the environment. But, you know, there's so much more. If you get inflammation of the brain, then you're into depression and anxiety, maybe worse. Cancers are inflammatory in process. So many things can come as a very sad consequence of this that you need to take it seriously. Personal, what do they call? Personal care products, I suppose they call them, don't they? You know, smelly things that supposed to make you smell nice or make you look pretty. A lot of these are in the air, they're aerosol bound. I mean, I'm very worried about the amount of cosmetics women slather on their bodies. And I know for a fact from a scientific study that the average woman will absorb about 2 pounds, or that's 1 kilo of cosmetic chemical sludge through their skins. Think the skin protects you? Think again. Why do we have hormone patches? Because the hormones just go straight through the skin, don't they? So, you know, don't be fooled into thinking the skin is a perfectly impermeable barrier. Your skin is brilliant, but it can't hold out these chemicals. But it's worse when it goes into your lungs. So if your lady sprays her hair, my darling wife likes to look beautiful, and she does, as you know, but she sprays her hair and it worries me. And I run out of the bathroom when she sprays this sticky gunk into the air. I don't want sticky gunk in my lungs, darling. All right, you stay looking beautiful and do what you have to do. I will just run out of the bathroom, but that's our arrangement, okay? Other things like gas, I mean, one of the most outstanding things, of course, is gas appliances, which can be washing and heating appliances or cooking appliances. Don't forget the chemicals that are not just Teflon and poisonous chemicals on non-stick things, but if you fry, things come into the air that are quite toxic, and of course ex-gassing of the Teflon and similar related chemicals anyway. Ask any housewife, she'll tell you that a non-stick frying pan will only last about 5 years. After that, most of the Teflon is gone. Gone where? Into your lungs and down your throat. I'm sorry, but it's true, right? Dry cleaning fluids, the perchloroethylene gas, it's highly toxic. It does a wonderful job of dry cleaning, but then they drop it in a plastic bag to make sure that the chemical doesn't escape. Then you take it home, put it in your closet, take off the plastic bag, and boom, out comes all this extremely, extremely toxic chemical stuff. How do I know it's toxic? Well, it just is. I know a bit of biochemistry, but I know it's toxic because it removes stains and discoloring. So, it's biologically active and will dissolve things. Therefore, it will dissolve your lungs and kidneys. Please be serious about this. Okay. Fireplaces, fires, they're lovely, they're romantic. It's lovely to cuddle up with a glass of mulled wine with somebody you love beside a nice, glowing, warm log fire. But it's a health hazard. There's no getting around it. This fire is just as much a health hazard as a wildfire in California and all the stuff that it produces. So, if you do have a wood burning stove, please use it minimally. Use it only for those special romantic occasions. If you can bear to do it, have one of those gas-fired fake logs that will light automatically so that you can keep them behind a glass screen and the fumes will go up the chimney. But none at all is better, but you can at least shield yourself between a sheet of heat-resistant glass and some of these fake logs that glow and have flames are very convincing. They look good. And then last but not least of all, of course, is smoking. I don't care whether it's tobacco, junk, or marijuana, whatever. Don't do it. It's horribly destructive and is obviously contributing to indoor air pollution. And even if you're a smoker, don't say, well, I smoke, my husband smokes, what does it matter? We're breathing all this stuff. No, please take yourself a little bit more seriously than that. And if you must smoke, go and smoke outdoors so that you're not filling the house with toxic pollutants. Better still, of course, you know, is don't smoke. Okay, so there are other indoor pollutants. I've been talking about chemicals, but there's a lot to it as well. Mold spores, so some molds can be extremely poisonous. Dust mites, house dust mite. Now, house dust mites, they live in the carpet. They feed on human skin scales that fall into the carpet. So wherever you sit and people hang out, there are house dust mites. But the bedroom carpet is often riddled with these things because you take your clothes off, maybe you give yourself a rub down after the shower. So your bedroom carpet's riddled with your skin scales, and these things, they live there. Armies of them. And what people are actually allergic to, and wait for this, it's disgusting, but what people actually react allergic to is not the dust mite, it's the dust mite droppings, the feces, that dust mite shit, if you like, is what really sensitizes people the most. Pollens, we all know, that's very seasonal. Pet danders aren't. If you've got a cat, you're going to be exposed to it all year round, and some are worse than others. But how would you know if you're environmentally sensitive, to things you're breathing? I use questions over the years with people, and these are some of the things that will give you a clue if you're reacting to, say, chemicals in the environment anyway. One of the important things is symptoms change from room to room. And it's pretty obvious if you think about it. But when did your doctor last ask you, do your symptoms change if you move from one room to another? If you can breathe freely in one room, but you start to get a clogged runny nose and catarrh or start to wheeze in another room, the room is the problem, not you. The room is, so what is it about that room? And you have to start an investigation. A doctor, an intelligent doctor, might want to say, well, do your symptoms change from season to season? Now, we all know about seasonal allergies, pollen, and you have a bit of a time in spring, but then, come the first frost in fall and you're fine. But for some people, it's the other way round. They're worse in the winter. Why? Because we lock ourselves indoors, turn up the furnace and the central heating, and the indoor pollution rises astronomically in winter. So that might be a clue. If you're worse in winter than in summer, when you spend a lot of time out in the fresh air, you've learned something. Now, look, there are some very cute symptoms that I and clever colleagues noticed over the years. A person might obviously be averse to the smell of chemicals, yeah, ugh, take that away. Yeah, that's obvious that, the chemicals are not good for you, but you might have lost your sense of smell because of chemical sensitivity. So you don't smell anything, you don't react, you don't go, yeah. But nevertheless, it's because of your chemical sensitivity that you actually lose your sense of smell totally. And then again, it could happen in different places. At home, you can't smell anything. But if you go to one of your friends' houses 10 miles away, you've got a very acute nose and can smell everything. These are very strong clues to environmental allergens, do you see? You might be acutely sensitive to the smell of chemicals, the tiniest whiff, and you react and you get a symptom. Like I said, if there's enough to smell, there's enough to cause symptoms. You might even like the smell of chemicals. I've come across that one many times in my career, that a person actually likes it, but eventually it turns out it's something that's really, really bugging them. And they were reacting to some version of that. I remember as a kid, we lived on a farm down in the country. I used to love to drive the tractor. It felt very big, as an 8 or 10-year-old kid. You get to drive the tractor. It's quite safe, of course, because you weren't anywhere near the road. You're out in the fields. But I used to love the smell of diesel. Well, looking back and what I know now, I'd really understand that to probably mean that I was reacting to these things. And of course, the final, obvious, and intelligent question, you might already know that you've got chemical symptoms, that hairspray makes you sneeze, or, if you use a certain kind of aerosol, it'll start you off coughing and so on. Nevertheless, these are important and intelligent kinds of questions to ask yourself. Okay, now we talked about these airborne danders, inhalants, they're called, inhalant allergens. But don't forget, we also need to include pathogens like bacteria and viruses. The mold spores and fungi is there on the slide anyway, so I've just added bacteria and viruses, but we breathe them in, and some of them are extremely poisonous. The Black Death was transmitted mostly by inhalation, by breathing in. If you went near somebody who had the Black Death, or the bubonic plague as it was called, you met them at breakfast time, you breathed it in, it started in your lungs, you'd have pneumonia in the afternoon and be dead by bedtime. Goodness, that's a seriously dangerous pathogen. Anyway, let's go back to indoor pollutants, because it's very important, and all the different sources. Now here we have a very, very pretty sort of home, but you don't know what the hidden chemical dangers are in a home like this. The one thing I would say is the newer it is, the more chemicals you're going to be breathing. That smell of new furniture, the new carpet smell, these things that denote chemicals, and the person who is very sensitive to these smells is right. They're going to react to them because it's going to reach them chemically, and they're going to be reactive or sensitized to it. There are all kinds of possible things in the environment. I don't think we worry about asbestos much now. Like I said, these are not my slides, although I've added one or two of my own. Formaldehyde, though, is the big one, cavity wall insulation, but it comes off furniture, it comes off clothing, all sorts of places where you bump into formaldehyde, even newsprint. Nobody reads newspapers anymore, but 20 or 30 years ago, I used to ask the question, do you find that newsprint makes your nose tickle, or you sneeze, or start coughing even? No, flame retardants and very strong chemicals like that. I mean, flame retardants are required by law, but they're extremely poisonous. Yes, they do their job, meaning, yes, they will stop you burning to death if your sofa catches fire. But, the price is high. It means whether you're ever going to have a house fire or not, or whether your sofa is ever going to burn with you sitting on it, may or may not happen, and probably hope, please God, it never would. And yet you're required to spend years breathing the flame retardant protectant. Well, it's a problem. Paints. Now, in America here, you've got a better system that you don't have toluene, for example, which is a highly toxic chemical substance. TDI is another one. Diisocyanate, toluene diisocyanate is very, very sensitizing, but you don't have it here. The penalty that you pay is the paint's rubbish. You know, 5 years it needs painting again. So we have good paint that lasts 25 years, but it's poisonous as hell. And in fact, you know, it's seriously damaging to people who actually do the painting. Painters and decorators get seriously sick in Britain. Fortunately, they are protected by law here in the USA, but that tells you something. You know, it tells you there's a lot of things in just household paint that are really not good for us. Excuse me. X-gassing, it's called, the gassing or chemicals that comes off things. Yes, you know, the upholstery, furniture, cloths and fabrics, carpeting, all of these things will X-gas chemicals when they're new. But don't forget also, it's true of cars. I had a lot of patients over the 40 years of clinical practice that simply were really ill. They couldn't buy a new car. And I used to say, literally, go sell your car. You know, you're going to lose money, but sell it and buy one that's at least 5 years old, because it's gone through the X-gassing process. And of course, don't buy one more than 15 years old. Otherwise, it starts being leaky and smelly and becomes a danger in a different sense. Yeah, it's almost difficult to win, isn't it? Right, there are other sources of indoor pollution. Some of it comes in. Radon comes up under the floorboards. If you open the windows, you might get pollution from outdoors, especially if you're in the city, and air conditioning, you know, deliberately sucks outside air and blows it inside. So you need to understand the scale of the risk is very significant. These are short-term symptoms and clues, any and all of these, but this is by no means limited to this. You know, migraine headache due to felt tip pens. I've seen that, you know, a number of times. Rashes and things like that could be a problem. Even aching joints and fatigue and, you know, mood changes, all of those things. All of these are potential problems that can result from indoor pollution, meaning they will improve by getting rid of the indoor pollution. So let's look at some sensible strategies, and then I'll tell you what I think of as the ultimate solution. I've said this already. Just don't smoke. Listen, if you have to smoke, if you really, really want to damage your biology system, at least don't do it in the house, so that your house doesn't become extremely polluted. Make sure you switch your household products like cleaning fluids, washing up liquid detergents, switch to eco-friendly versions, environmentally friendly versions that are not going to seriously damage your biology. There are reputable brands out there now that you can trust. From time to time, I let them advertise to my list. If you've got an AC, you know, whatever you're doing with a air cleaning system or AC, you must change your filters on a regular basis. Otherwise, you're just blowing junk around the house. That's what airlines do, basically. You know, they have all these filters, the air changeover system, but they don't keep it cleaned often enough. So the air you breathe on an airplane is often extremely polluted. If you've got a gas burning appliance, you probably know the safety issues anyway. You've got to be careful to vent it carefully. There are tragedies every year from carbon monoxide poisoning. But I'm not thinking of anything even as serious as that. You know, if you have a gas stove on which you cook, make sure you have an an over-the-top canopy that opens to the air outside. Some of them are just a cheat, aren't they? They're just a hood, and all it does is suck up the toxic gases into the hood, and that's it. They stick there. That's not what we want. We want it to suck up the effluent gases from the cooking and blow them outside the building. Now, I've also talked about this one, you know, don't store chemicals around the house. Do the nose survey and get everything out of your immediate space. It depends whether the garage is attached or not, but, you know, make sure that you get it out of any connected space so that it won't pollute your space, and at least do it for a test. If you feel very much better, you know that you're onto something. You've got to buy green, you know, you've got to take it seriously these days. You've got to buy furnishings that are consciously using less of the biologically dangerous stuff 20, 30 years ago, manufacturers didn't give a damn. They just didn't care. But now there are a lot of caring people around. They try and solve the problem for you. Sometimes you have to pay a little bit more. But, you know, what's the cost really of falling ill 10 or 15 years before the end of your life, when you could have been, you know, ill, staying well right up to the last 2 or 3 days, you know? And then finally, the one important thing I want to share with you, and one of the reasons for calling, don't forget, I will come to questions in a minute, but if you've got just a few minutes with me, I'd just like to talk to you now about high quality air purification. There are a lot of these on the market now, all sorts of specifications, all sorts of claims, things they can do. Whatever you're looking for, you must go for what we call a HEPA filter. HEPA stands for high efficiency particulate air, and it will trap nearly 100% of particles down as small as 0.3 of a micron. Look at the scale on the right there. This big fat brown thing, looks like a chocolate cake, is actually a cross section of a human hair. That's 80 microns across. The little yellow ball is a pollen grain, that's 20 microns across. Dust and dust mite particles can be as small as 5 microns, and pet dander 3 microns. Smoke particles, anything up to, you know, 1 full micron, sometimes smaller than that. So 0.3 of a micron HEPA filter will take out most smoke particles. So it's pretty good, it's pretty protective. But you can go a step further than that. You can go for what we call an ultra HEPA filter, and this traps 100% of particles down as far as 0.003 microns. Now that's 100 times more efficient than a HEPA filter, and it's smaller than, dare I say it, a COVID, you know, COVID virus. That family of viruses, most viruses are around 1.1 of a micron, I should say. Some are bigger than that, but certainly 0.003 microns will scrub your air of viruses and all other pathogens like bacteria, fungus particles, fungus spores, and so on. So we got that taken care of with an ultra HEPA filter. You're going to get some pretty clean air. But we've got to take care of these chemicals, because then chemicals are not particulate, they're just gases in the air. Volatile organic chemicals, they're called VOCs, formaldehyde and those things that I was talking about, phthalates and so on, right? These are chemicals in the air. So you want to also add what's called an activated carbon filter. No, we're just running through carbon. It needs to be activated carbon. And that's very important, because it means it's finely divided and has a vastly increased surface area. I'm going to tell you about one at the moment which is coated in potassium permanganate, and that's ultra super efficient at removing chemicals. To be sure of what you're getting, you need to look at something called the CADR rating. That stands for Clean Air Delivery Rate. And it's very important. You know, if you've got one that's removing super small particles and it's really efficient and you really believe what the salesman's telling you, that's great. But if it's only changing the air once an hour, it's useless. You know, it's got to change the air 3, 4, preferably 5 or 6 times an hour. That's what we're looking for. So it's very important to choose. You see these numbers here, 138, 128, and so on. This is the CADR rating. A CADR rating of 138 will mean it'll scrub all pollen out of the air. So this is what you need to look for, basically. I'm summing it up now. There's an ultra HEPA filter, which is able to capture even the smallest particles, including viruses. It really, really will clear your air. You're going to be looking for an activated carbon filter, which is able to efficiently remove chemicals or gas contaminants from the air in your home. And you're going to look for a high CADR rating, the air exchange rate. Make sure it's as high as possible, certainly if you can in the 200 or 300s. Okay, now here is an answer to all of those issues, and it's called the Air Doctor. Now, I didn't think of that. I would have said, you know, 30 years ago, I'd have called myself the Air Doctor, because that's what I did. I tell people all about, you know, cleaning up and capturing particles and so on. But anyway, this is a very natty device, runs very quietly, as I'll explain I love the one I've got. It has ultra HEPA filtration, so it's automatically removing all pet danders, mold and pollens, dust mite, debris, smoke, bacteria and viruses, all the particulate stuff, okay? It also has a carbon and gas trap for the volatile organic chemicals. It's activated carbon, and as I said, it's treated with potassium permanganate, so that's going to take out your ozone, which is poisonous, formaldehyde, all the flame retardants and all the things that off gas from furniture, building materials, plastics and things in the home. So, but what about the CADR? Well, actually, over 300 for each of these things, so it's very efficient. In fact, it will change the air of a 450 square foot room 6 times an hour. That's a room that's rather more than 20 by 20, if you're any good at maths. I'm not, but I happen to know that. Even if you're trying to treat a very large public space, like a hallway, an open plan kitchen and so on, maybe 900 square feet, it'll still treat it 3 times per hour. It will change all the air in that space. And there's some other rather snazzy little extras that to me make this the superb product, which is why I'm prepared to sit here and share this with you. For one thing, you see that little circle above the Air Doctor logo? It will tell you the air quality that you've got. If it's running at blue, it's whisper quiet, it's hardly moving, it means you've got really good quality air in the room. But if you should trigger or release some pollution, it'll quickly go to red. The fan will accelerate and extract the particles as fast as it can. We notice it in our house, for example, the one that's in the kitchen. It's an open plan kitchen near an eating table, but if my wife's cooking a nice steak, we like to give them a good sizzle. We don't like well done, but we like to sizzle the outside of a steak. But the air doctor will, in the corner, will go, no, it'll turn red and vroom, starts to roar, where it cleans up the air for us. It's really quite funny playing this game with the air doctor. When it's winning, it drops to orange and then back to blue. You're back to really good pure air in that space. So I can see it from anywhere in the room, and I look for the blue. Then I know I'm breathing the purest air that I possibly can. There's a setting which switches on an air ionizer. Some of you, I think, will know that model. Basically, we believe that negative ions are really quite healthy and positive ions have poor health outcomes, their negative impact for your health. It would be nice to trigger negative ions. Well, this machine will do that. You press the button and you can switch on the air ionizer. It'll release ions, and those interact with some of the particles and will precipitate them anyway. But negative ions do have this sort of feel-good factor. Negative ions are what you meet at the beach, in the surf, by the ocean, lots of negative ions. Or if you're in the forest, negative ions. Or near a waterfall or a lake, lots of negative ions. These are the feel-good places, aren't they? And we do associate that with negative ions. So that's a very cute addition anyway, which is unnecessary, but it's a nice extra. You get a filter alert, so it'll tell you whether you need to change the HEPA filter or whether you need to change the carbon filter. So it's pretty friendly. In other words, there's a timer, so you can switch it on. You can time it so it'll run for, say, 18 hours and then turn itself off if you have a reason or a situation to require that. It does it rather easily, actually. It has a dim mode, so you don't see the blue light or orange light or anything else in the dark. It will clean up the air in the bedroom. And, if you could really run to only one of these, the bedroom is the place I'd pick, because we spend a third of our life in the bedroom. Oh, yeah, you think, it's going to be noisy and keep you awake. No, actually, it's got a beautiful whisper jet fan and motor. It's extremely quiet. It purrs very quietly. And as long as you don't put it, within 2 feet of your head, you're probably not going to hear it, even in the bedroom. Put it at the far side of the bedroom. So it's a super designed, top quality, efficient system. And it's sealed, so the whole thing compacts together, and the air's sucked in at one end through the screen on the left, and it comes out at the back end as scrubbed and as pure and as clean as an air that you can get. All right, so how much is that going to cost? Thousands of dollars? Well, you can pay that for HEPA filters and ultra HEPA filters, but no, actually, I've got this deal going, which is what I want to share with you. So compare this with units, you know, that might cost $1,000 or more. The Air Doctor has a pretty good retail price anyway of $629, but we've been able to negotiate with the manufacturers a $300 off deal. There aren't many people allowed that. If you go to eBay or Amazon, they're required by the company's rules to sell it for $495, but we can get this to you for $329 plus shipping and handling. To take out, I'm going to keep talking for several minutes, and then I'm going to questions for, who knows, could be half an hour. So I'm going to point your attention to the URL at the bottom. If you want to get on with this, you're convinced, and say, hey, I want one, I want two. Go to drkeithsown.com/air doctor, but it's air-doctor. And the air-doctor is all lowercase. It doesn't matter about the Dr. Keith's Own. As you see, it doesn't matter whether you use upper or lower case, but after the .com and slash, it has to be case sensitive. So air-doctor in lowercase. Okay, now there's more to it than that. In fact, if you go over there now, please, by all means do. But we're actually going to sweeten the pot even more. I've persuaded the suppliers to offer a free replacement carbon filter with a removable and washable pre-filter. The pre-filter is the one that takes the fuzz and the cat fur and all the dander and things out, so it doesn't even enter into the formula. So that protects the first filter that it comes to, which is the carbon filter. Those are retail for $60, and you have, yes, you do, you have to replace them from time to time. I think we've replaced ours once in 3 years. Is it 3 years? I think so. Anyway, the point is it will tell you when to replace, so you don't have to, you know, it's a long time between. You're not asked to completely and continuously replace these things. So for $329, you get your machine and you get a free replacement filter. You've got to pay shipping and handling, and of course, if you live in Timbuktu or somewhere, that could be serious. But you know, to have one of these devices, I can't stress for you enough just how really seriously important it is. Okay, so let's move on. I'm going to do questions in a minute. I'll repeat what I just said, and I'm going to leave this up so that you know where to go. You go to drkeithsown.com/air doctor, written exactly as it is in the middle, air-doctor. And for that, you get this special deal. In fact, you're going to get $689 worth of retail value for only $329. That's less than half price, which is a pretty good deal. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here wasting your time, folks. I think it's a damn good deal. Okay, so that's the end of the formal presentation. And for those of you who have to run to catch a train or something, thank you for staying this far. But I'm now going to go and look at questions for those of you who've taken the trouble. I mean, I hope I've been, no question. All right, let's look at the chat, because there's some chat questions, definitely. I know I was extremely efficient, and Doc can't see you. Well, I hope you didn't see me. You should have seen a slideshow, not me. I hope. Well, yes. Okay. Well, here's a very simple question. When I talk about the smell test, are there issues with essential oils? Yes, Trevor, there are. That's not to say I'm condemning essences or, you know, essential oils. I'm just saying if you can smell it, it can cause problems. So it's something a person would need to be aware of. And Trevor's also obviously in Australia and wants to know if it's available there. Well, the people I know that will ship this unit for you certainly will ship it there. I don't know if there's a local chapter of Air Doctors. I don't know, Trevor. Let's find out. But why don't you? I mean, let me say one thing, folks. If you follow that lead there, you're not obliged to go and buy something. But if you follow it, you'll find one of those little chat tabs in the corner where you can click on it and then ask questions of the people there. And we do have an expert on the device standing by to answer your questions. Okay, so Raju has an Auric XL. I'm not familiar with that, Auric, and so how do I know if it's doing its job? Any way to test it? Well, Honestly, I don't know. I don't know the device. So, I mean, I know you're in touch with me, Raji. You might be there on Sunday. So I'll endeavor to get some answers for you. But I'm not familiar with the device. I don't know. But you know, the beauty of this one, the Air Doctor, I mean, it's brilliant. It looks after you. You know, it says, oh, bad air. Oh, that's better. Oh, now we're back to clean air. Oh, you know, it's time you changed the filter. It's time you did this. It's like, you know, it makes you a cocktail just about. It's a very clever device, I must say. Viv and I are very happy to have this in our home. And as I said, if you can only run to one, put it in the bedroom, because that's where we spend a third of our lives, isn't it? So, you know, if you could spend a third of your life breathing decent air. Glenn, you've worried me now. And Raja, in fact, Raja said the same thing, can't see me. Well, I'm not supposed to be on view. That was the whole point. It was a slideshow and I'm doing the presentation. I don't know. Raju, did you mean you're missing that little thumbnail of me in the corner? If so, you know, don't worry about it. I'm still here. You can tell from my voice. Okay, a Q&A. I think somebody's... Oh, no, it was Raju. Okay. Any more chats? Not at this moment. Okay, well, I've got the strong feeling then that I've answered comprehensive questions and nobody's left floundering or confused. You know what is on offer, you know what it will do, and you know the value of it. So, you know, it's your call, basically. Okay, Kenneth, a good point, Kenneth. How can you place an order for two? Well, I don't know. My wife Vivian will get onto that for you. But certainly, would you, if you go to the site, click on the little chat box, the chat interactive box, and type that question in there. If not, don't worry. I'm making a note of your name now. So I mean, when I see the order, I'll tell the people who are doing it. When you see the order, go back to Kenneth with his email or phone number or whatever you've typed in, and he wants another one. We're giving rock bottom discounts, so I can't give you cheaper for two, Kenneth, but I will say it's not going to be on offer long. I mean, it's a bit counterproductive. If we weren't all living indoors, you know, there wouldn't be any need to give this sort of killer deal. So it certainly won't last. They've made that clear to me. So, you know, if you want to, grab them now. It was the first and most obvious thing that I thought of doing. Don't go away. Vivian may well come and deal with it for you, or she'll come behind me and tell me what the answer is. Okay, but thanks for the question, Kenneth. If they missed that out, I do apologize. And listen, if all else fails, buy it, and then click on the link again and go and buy it again. If all else fails, we'll obviously only charge you, you know, shipping at cost, not double the lot of shipping, because it won't be double the amount to ship to. Of course, it'll be slightly more. That's all. And I do apologize if that's what any of you are going to see. It seems a little bit crazy, so it's rather sad. Okay, Jim already has an Air Doctor, and I love it. Thank you for the testimonial, Jim. Interesting, when we run the essential oil diffuser, it sometimes goes up to the orange or red function. Yeah, well, I mean, the essences are essence of oils. I mean, I love the smells, and some, you know, patchouli, and I mean, my favorite sandalwood. Well, Vivian's favorite is the sandalwood. But they are particulate, you know, they're aerosol drops, in other words, so they will trigger the device and you'll end up with a slightly smelly filter. But if you don't mind, it'll soon clear itself. And no, I mean, Margaret is now asking, are there risks of essential oils? The main risk, Margaret, is intolerance, really. By nature, by definition, they are very intense chemicals. And for somebody with a tendency to be sensitive or to react to things, it's obviously far more likely to happen to a person like that. Same with, I mean, even just for example, citrus fruit. You know, if somebody cuts a lemon, you can smell it at the other side of the room. It's very intense. And so guess what? You know, citrus fruit is among the commonest, among the top 10 food allergies, because it's intense. So, you know, we're using that intense flavor and it's important to the person, but as long as you don't react to it, you're okay. And you're not going to damage your Air Doctor, for example, but it will pull out those droplets that smell. So I would say, you know, probably you should be doing your essential oils in one of the rooms, not the bedroom, and then clean up the bedroom air. Probably. Okay. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Now, CG, where did Kenneth it was, wasn't it? Asked the question. CG has been very clever, Kenneth. Follow him. He says, once you order the first one, it will allow you to add another one, or however many more you want. So I'm pleased to have answered that for you. Thank you, CJ. I don't know what CJ stands for, but very nice of you. Thank you. So Kenneth, off you go. Order one and then bump the numbers once you get the order started. Okay. Otherwise, I hope you don't have any trouble with purchasing, that people will look after you there. Anyone else now with any questions? I mean, we've covered a hell of a lot of ground, haven't we? I've practically given you a lesson in clinical ecology, followed by what I consider to be one of the world's number. Listen, there are one or two devices that may be slightly better, but you're looking at the $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 range, not $500 or less. This is, like, goodness me, it's just less than $400. I think it's staggering, and as I said, we've sweetened the pot with a free filter for you just now. And I believe you will get one free carbon filter for each device you buy, in case somebody wants to ask that question as well. Okay, so I'm going to start winding down if I don't see. All right, listen, for Raju and anybody else that was bugged by not seeing me, I'll start the video. I'm still doing the screen share. You should now see me up here, yes, somewhere in a little thumbnail in the corner, just to see it really is me, not somebody who's a very good voice mimic. It really is me. And it's nice to have shared time with you guys. I really enjoyed it, actually, giving it. It's been quite a stressful day one way or the other, but as soon as I relax and settle into a job, then it's really easy. Okay, Debbie wants to ask a question. Are you familiar with the molecule, spelt a funny way with a K-U-L-E at the end, the molecule air cleaner? It's got an activated carbon pre-filter and now let me tell you something what I know about this, Debbie. The electrostatic precipitation things are very bad. The reason is they rely on an electrically charged plate. That's all right. What it does is charge particles and they stick to the plate. The trouble is, and what the salesman may not have told you, Debbie, is that you then got to clean the plate. Otherwise it stops working, and it only works for a few days. And then once the plate's covered with dust, you've got to scrape it all off again. So that's not a good way to go. Yes, thank you, Raju, for your little message. Okay, so it's not electrostatic. Okay, all right. So what are you calling it? Photoelectrochemical oxidation. What the hell is that? I don't know what that is. Debbie, I'd have to get back to you if you're serious about my answer. I mean, you sounds like you've got an answer. I'm not familiar with it at all. I've never heard of this thing. But obviously the activated carbon filter, those are fairly standard. Well, it's obviously to do with light and electrochemical Are you sure this is not electrostatic precipitation? How is it otherwise removing the chemical? Where does the the particles end up? Anyway, we'll see. Right. Okay, so, all right, listen, folks, I've got to tell you something. One of my team has just come on and told me that there are a lot of people now checking out. We may sell out tonight. Now, we're not going to deny anybody. Thank you for the link, Debbie. I will go. I promise I'll go and look for it afterwards. So we won't deny anybody. It just means you'll have to wait longer while we get into some more stock. But that's really good. There are a lot of people are grabbing at this, and why not? And I think Kenneth had the right idea. Let's get to and CJ, whoever CJ is. All right. Any more questions? I think I might have guessed who CJ is actually. Okay. No, I'm not seeing any more questions. So I'm going to have a sort of quick countdown, as it were. Somebody's reminding me, what about guarantees? I didn't say anything, did I? There should have been a slide about guarantees. I mean, there's the obvious, 30 days money back. If it's just not for you, you don't like it, you just, somehow you don't relate it, or you decide you don't want one, you got 30 days to just ship it back and get your money back. In terms of, breakdown and wear and tear, these are a pretty reliable company. And, for several months, you can say, well, the motor doesn't seem to be working so well, or it's gone slow. The people I know will intervene for you anyway, even if, you know, the people who intervene are going to ship for you. Those are not the people that manufacture the device, but they will certainly look after your interests because I know them and I can make them look after your interests. But so, you know, an obvious 30-day one. After it arrives, and you got a chance to try it, by the way, we're not tricky. You know, it takes 10 days to get there, so you've only got 20 days left on the warranty. No, from the day you get it and open the box and start using it, you can have a full 30 days to be sure that it's doing all the things I say it's doing. But trust me, it does. It's wonderful. Okay, all right. So I'm sorry, Debbie, that I didn't answer your question properly. I haven't the knowledge to do so, but I will follow through. In fact, I better write that URL down because it's easy in a way, but slightly unusual too. Molecule, I get it, it's a joke, but molecule with a K instead of a C. Anyone else? Last call for questions, comments, chat, remarks. Otherwise, I'm going to sign off and go and meet with my lovely wife downstairs. Okay, all right, thanks for coming, folks. I thought that was pretty good. I enjoyed that, and I feel, you know, we got a lot of information out there. Encourage, you know, if you've got friends that might be interested in the issue, you know, they have health and issues of that kind, then encourage them to come and watch the replay. I'll be sending the link out for the replay. Jim, yes. Oh, I've got a nice jokey message from Jim. He's got an air doctor that he's already got, and he's got another electronic device that I'm a champion of. On the way, he says, I'm looking forward to optimum health in my 65th year. Yes, Jim, well, let's look forward to your optimum health in your 90th and 95th, shall we? Play it right, there's no reason not. The statistics say, and this has been true for a while now, several years, but the statistics are basically, if you reach the age of 60 in good health, then the average life expectancy will go up to 85. If you reach 75 in good health, the average life expectancy goes up to over 90. And as you know, so many people now are passing the 100 mark. Goodness, I want to be. And the thing is, you know, we boomers, people that follow me, we've got a message in life, we've got a mission, which is we want to go on partying and rock and rolling till our last day. I don't want to live to 90. I want to party till I'm 90. Hey! Anyway, thanks for coming, folks. Been great fun. Take care. Bye now.